years old. $245 million in Bitcoin gone in hours. 7 days later, his parents are kidnapped. He confesses. He cooperates, and while out on bond, he allegedly steals another $2 million. How did a teenager talk billion-dollar platforms into giving him the keys? And what one overlap exposed him? Stay to the end. You'll hear the decision that cost him everything. This is Veer Chetal, 19, from Danbury, Connecticut. According to court filings, in a single day more than 4,100 Bitcoin left a Washington, D.C. investors' wallets and scattered across the chain. This isn't a story about elite malware or movie-style exploits. It's a story about people, about voices that sound helpful, about procedures that feel routine, and about trust. The one thing you can't afford to hand to the wrong person. We're going to track the money, we're going to cut through the noise, and we're going to pinpoint the tiny routine that leaked through the mask. By the end, the investigation reaches its obvious conclusion, and the consequences land where they always do. Most hacks don't start with code. They start with a call. Picture a support desk on a busy day. Phones ringing, tickets stacking, people doing their best to help. Into that noise walks a voice. Calm, polite, precise. The voice knows the company name, the product, the right jargon. It references a real incident ID. It mirrors the tone you expect from an insider. None of that is magic. It's preparation. In the next 60 seconds, I'll show you how that preparation turns into real money moving. The rhythm is predictable because people are predictable. First comes credibility, a small detail only an insider should know. Then urgency, a deadline, a client waiting, a system at risk. Then authority. Let me take this off your plate. Security asked me to expedite. Here's the callback number if you need it. If you've ever reset a password, verified a phone number, or unlocked an account, you've walked this hallway. Once a recovery path opens, other doors tend to follow. Not because systems are dumb, but because humans are busy, helpful, and trusting. That's how a confident teenager can sound, exactly like the person you're supposed to trust. And that was only 10% of the plan. 48 hours before the big move, the rehearsal phase kicks in. According to investigators, identities are practiced, cover stories tighten, small errors get sanded down. The goal is simple: open one door, the recovery flow. He doesn't need to break things, he needs someone to hold one open. 12 hours out, the door cracks. An account is in the process of being secured. Two-step checks appear satisfied. Inbox access lines up with the wrong hands. Backstops that work 99 times out of 100 miss once. Then, 0 hour. More than 4,100 Bitcoin shifts. Numbers on a dashboard become a lifetime of savings in motion. And once that weight starts rolling, every second matters. 24 hours later, the coins fan outward, speed over subtlety, services that promise privacy, a maze by design. In 30 seconds, we start cutting through the noise. Then the first crack appears. 7 days in, a new headline breaks. Not about wallets, about family. A kidnapping no one saw coming. The crime has gravity now. The violence isn't just financial. Behind those numbers is a person in a living room, a phone that won't stop buzzing, a graph that won't stop moving. For them, this isn't a case. It's a day that won't end. They aren't thinking about blockchain analysis. They're thinking about how to tell the people they love that the money is gone. Crypto isn't invisible, it's loud. Every move writes to a ledger. The trick is separating the music from the noise. Investigators reduce the noise. They look for rhythms, where coins linger, where they split, where they reunite, where behavior looks like a person, not a machine. They mark the hour money tends to move. They note the gaps that look like sleep. They circle the days that always seem quiet and the nights that always seem busy. For this trail, you only need 3 stops. Stop 1. The exchange. Somewhere, a real identity brushes a platform that touches cash. Names, dates, devices, habits. It doesn't have to be blatant. It just has to exist. A reused phone, a familiar IP, a device that shows up twice. Metadata is boring until it isn't. Sometimes identity touches money for a split second. That's enough to leave a shadow. Imagine a shell game with 1,000 shells and someone shaking the table. Coins blur, paths multiply. But human decisions still seep through. People repeat the times they like to move money. They repeat the places they feel safe. They repeat the way they split a large number into smaller ones. What looks random often isn't. Even chaos has habits. Wallets that act human. They sleep at night. They buy in clumps. They sync with time zones and calendars. They follow holidays. They slow down on weekends. They repeat the same tiny mistake because people do. A pattern of normal life sneaks into the trail, and normal life has fingerprints. The investigation meter is rising, 10%, 20, 40. In 30 seconds, we hit the overlap that tied a fake life to a real one. People who get away with it forget why people get caught. It's never the master plan, it's the tiny routine that leaks. A reused alias that shows up twice. A brag message from the wrong device. A travel pattern that matches a real itinerary. One overlap between a persona and a person. You're about to hear the overlap. Listen for the detail that doesn't belong. According to prosecutors, that overlap was enough. It cracked the wall, it linked the trail to a 19-year-old with far more money in motion than time on Earth. One overlap. Everything unravels. It usually starts with a tip or a complaint. An investigator opens a file. A team requests logs. Device IDs align. IP hops line up. Timestamps click a little too neatly. An email shows up where it shouldn't. A phone number that was temporary appears again. The small stones in the river begin to point the same direction. Then comes the knock. The bond hearing. A judge hears why a teenager tied to a $250 million theft might be a flight risk. The courtroom language is dry. The stakes are not. Meanwhile, there's another development. This one will redefine the stakes. While out on bond, according to a federal filing, there was another alleged theft, roughly $2 million. It's not the amount that matters most, it's the timing. That choice turned cooperation into risk, and risk into revocation. Bond revoked, case widened, and the family, they had already lived the worst headline of all. A courtroom decision lands like a door closing, with no handle on the inside. Kidnapping changes how a case feels. It reminds everyone that money is not the only thing at stake. It reminds you that crimes never stay inside the screen. They spill into living rooms and hospital corridors, and midnight phone calls. The damage isn't just financial, it's time, it's trust, it's sleep you won't get back. Sometimes the scariest part of a crime is how ordinary the day looked, 5 minutes before it began. In federal court, a guilty plea sets the table. Sentencing decides the meal. Restitution hangs over everything. According to the docket, the exposure is serious. For a 19-year-old, even a short sentence is an entire life reshaped. Calendars turn into consequences. At sentencing, the room slows down. Victims can stand and speak. Guideline ranges are argued in careful language. Enhancements and reductions debated like math with feelings. There is talk of supervised release, of restitution schedules that look like calendars turned into invoices, of forfeiture. The court weighs cooperation against escalation, apology against action, youth against impact. It is not a spectacle. It is arithmetic applied to a life. And when the gavel falls, the numbers that matter aren't on a blockchain. They are years. This is the gravity behind the headline number, not the digits on a thumbnail. The years between a decision and its cost. There's a temptation to explain the whole thing with one word, greed. But that misses the pattern. The pattern is momentum. First you get away with something small. Then you convince yourself you can keep pace with the risk. Then you start solving problems you created by creating bigger ones. Momentum turns into gravity, and gravity always wins. Confidence isn't a shield. It's a countdown you can't hear until it's almost over. Here's the uncomfortable truth about social engineering. It doesn't look like a movie. It looks like a helpful voice on a stressful day. It sounds like a script you've heard 100 times. It rides on politeness. It borrows urgency. 3 red flags you can spot in 3 seconds. 1, an urgent support call that tries to shortcut normal verification. 2, a recovery request that pivots to a new phone or email during the call. 3, we'll secure it for you language, followed by a request for codes. If you hear any 2-in-1 conversation, end it. Call back through a published number. Verify with someone you know by name. Trust your doubt. That instinct is free, and it's better than any software you can buy. There's another pattern you should know, the brag. In almost every big case, someone can't resist telling the story, even in a small way. Not the whole thing, just enough to feel clever. A screenshot that lingers a second too long. A purchase that doesn't match the paycheck. After a case like this, copycats appear. They recycle the script, they change a few lines, they test the edges of trust just to see what still works. For a while, the system gets smarter until it forgets, until the next voice sounds helpful enough, on a busy enough day, to open the same door again. So, how did he get in? With a voice and a script. How was he caught? With one overlap between a fake life and a real one. What did it cost? Everything that makes 19 feel invincible. If this felt big, the 17-year-old who stole $8 million in crypto is next. Tap here.